At what point did you realize that this was something that you just had to do for the rest of your life?
I thought my entire life growing up that I was going to follow in his footsteps and do something similar.
Everybody thinks they can just pick up a mic and do it. Unfortunately, that's not the case.
People have such a fear of rejection. I just think the worst thing somebody can say is no. One of the businesses that we started was a marketing agency for a lot of entrepreneurs. I'm interviewing these people, but I'm learning from them and I'm able to implement things into our businesses and what we're doing.
I sat around really upset, like, why didn't I do something about it to be able to get some skin in that game?
Believing that you can is more profitable than believing that you can't. Procrastination is the assassination of all destination.
I just love everything about it. School of Hard Knocks, James Dumoulin, and the team. He's surrounded himself with extraordinary people. Excuse me, sir. Excuse me, sir. Hey, my name's Peter Tuchman. What's your name?
I'm James Dumoulin, the School of Hard Knocks.
Yeah, School of Hard Knocks. When did you become a millionaire?
23 years old.
No way. How old are you now?
23 years old.
Really? Unbelievable.
Yes,
so it's recent.
Recent.
Really?
Very
Tell me
recent.
about it. What business were you in?
Well, I mean, we built one of the largest business media channels in the entire world with over 20 million followers. And there's a saying that I love that where attention goes, revenue flows. So if you can, do what we did, which was build vertical brands or, leverage vertical integration with the existing channel and platform we had, is exactly what we did and built some cool businesses.
Okay, and so you've interviewed how many billionaires and millionaires?
37 billionaires, probably like 1,000 millionaires.
Over how much period of time?
4 years.
4 years. And so tell me about you at the age of like 17, 18. What brought you to this level? What was the idea? What was that sort of aha moment when you decided this was your vision, this is your mission?
So my dad went to West Point, the United States Military Academy. Right. He had an incredible career in the Army. I thought my entire life growing up that I was going to follow in his footsteps and do something similar. But when I visited my brother when he was going to the University of Texas in Austin, he was getting mentored by a CEO of like a multi-billion-dollar company out there. And when I had visited him out there, my mind had completely flipped from wanting to go from the military to wanting to go into business. Didn't know what I would do at the time, but I found TikTok in 2019 as like the greatest organic marketing that ever existed in the world.
Yes, it is, yeah.
Like you could post a video you have 50 followers, you could post a video and millions of people could see it overnight if it's a good piece of content. Yep. And so I just learned the skill of mastering attention on social media and how to really go viral, like what actually leads to virality. And so put the passion of business with the skill of content creation and, pivoted a bunch of times when we started the channel back in 2021, but ultimately, built what has become now one of the biggest media channels in the world.
I am in awe of you, and I've been in awe with you for the longest time. Explain to me what makes something go viral. Because that's everyone's dream. Everyone's dream is, look, content is an amazing thing. Some people are natural at it, right? You are a natural at it. Fortunately, I think I am too. Absolutely. And it's something that, you
don't get 20, 40 million views on a video if you're not a natural at it.
Exactly. But you know what? It's funny though, because social media is a fascinating thing. It plays on confidence. It plays on self-esteem. It plays on a lot of different things. And what I think is so extraordinary about you and differentiates you from anybody else in this business is your amazing ability to very clearly pivot. And you're not very often when people are interviewing people, they're always thinking about the next thing they're going to say, as opposed to listening to what the interviewee is saying and then responding to it, because they're not confident enough with their ability to interact and to and interpret on a quick level, right? So they're not really listening, right? Listening is a problem that most people have, right? If you watch Shark Tank, right, you'll see the people who don't get deals are people who don't listen to the sharks. If you go in there, you're talking to billionaires, right, and you're asking for their advice to help you, and you need to be able to listen. Listening is an amazing skill, and you are an absolute master at that. What makes something go viral?
So first of all, the only part of the video that matters is the first 3 seconds. The hook of the video is what I put all my effort and time into. It has to be a bold claim, a pattern interrupt, something that gets people to stop, because everybody's attention spans now, it's so damn short. You're competing with millions of pieces of content. Right. So if you can get them to stop in the first 3 seconds, add some sort of retention, because the only metric on social media that matters is watch time. Think about it. Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, they're competing against each other. Right. They're going to reward the creators. They're going to reward the people posting content that are keeping people on their platform longer than other people. So watch time is the thing to optimize for. So
eyeballs and retention.
Eyeballs and retention is everything. Right. Absolutely.
And so your hook, like you walk, I just started to do it because I I try to learn from you, the first thing you always say is, "Excuse me, do you have a second?"
Yeah.
Right. And then very often you'll find that they're the guys who will try and block you,
Right.
and you are persistent in a way that is not aggressive. It's not annoying.
Yeah.
It's and I've watched that, and that's an amazing skill.
Yeah.
I mean, were you as confident as this as a child? I mean, I did not know about the West Point part because look, I have so much deep respect for people who are in the armed services. And in fact, I'm doing some stuff soon with West Point. I'm going to be teaching them about my course and whatnot. I got invited to. My parents are Holocaust survivors,
right.
and I got invited to teach a class on. I was invited to be part of a class that they have on genocide,
Wow.
right? And my parents, having been survivors with numbers branded on their arms, have lived through. I'm sort of one of the closest 180 degrees of separation from people who have lived through
Right.
probably the greatest genocide of all time. No disrespect to the other ones. I'm not trying to compare, but it was amazing to be invited, and I've sort of spoken to people. So now that I know that about you, that is. Tell me how your father influenced in you in that way, and how that's played a big role in you being who you are, because you have this stance, you have this confidence that's extraordinary,
Yeah.
and it's not an imposing one, it's an embracing one, and it's an empathetic one, which is unusual.
Right. Well, I think just his career in general, it took us all over the world. So I lived in South Korea from the ages of 6 to 10.
Okay.
And so growing up, I moved in 3 different cities over there, traveled all the time. I went to 20 countries before I was 20 years old. That does something to you.
Yes.
When you're exposed to different cultures and you learn that people's differences actually make us stronger.
Yep.
It really does help out a lot. But my dad and mom are just incredible parents. My dad instilled a ton of discipline. My mom's the most compassionate woman I know. But my dad in particular, the one thing that I will forever take away from him is he just has more integrity than anybody I've ever met. I mean, if I was trying to cheat on an assignment in school, he'd be like, no. His thing whenever he was at when he was at West Point, if he didn't study for a test, take the F. Just take the F. You didn't study, you didn't prepare, don't cheat. And like do the right thing at all times. And so he instilled a lot of those principles from an early age. And also just to, always strive to do your best, and that you can see, feel, believe, and achieve like anything that you put your mind to.
Look, I love that part of it. I also grew up, my mother spoke 14 languages. My parents obviously lived through what they lived through. So, and we also did a lot of traveling. But, there's that sense of you. I think of myself, this is what I learned from my father. He would talk about the fact he was a humanist, right? Above all, he was a very well-known, he went on to become a famous doctor. And we always talked about, he said that, first of all, it's not about cash and prizes. The person who really wins here, who gets the big W, is somebody who ends up being able to empower other people, right? You don't need all the cash and prizes, but if you can affect someone else's life in a positive way, then you've achieved your goal. At the end of this, nobody gets out of here alive, right? And so, some of us we're here for a good time, not a long time, but you have. Think about, and all the people you've interviewed. And it's so funny, too, because, some people have a very cookie cutter, like podcasts and, and interviews and YouTubes and all that sort of get very, it's almost, jaded in a way because everybody's doing it. Everybody thinks they can just pick up a mic and do it. Unfortunately, that's not the case. And I would say you literally are at the top. And it's really an honor, and it's so much fun. Look, you interviewed me, and it was like, I think it's one of your best performing of all time. And that's wild for me because look, I'm going up against the top of the top. Yeah. And, to think, explain that to me though, because, we did an interview, right? It was after I had just really exploded. I was no slouch before that. I had 250,000 followers, and I went to 1 million. And then, because of the Show Speed interview that many people know, and then you interviewed me, right? And we got more likes and more comments and more views than and no disrespect to Tom Brady, Gary Vaynerchuk, and all that. Yeah. What do you attribute that to? Because I never read comments. I don't read comments ever. But for some reason, I did a deep dive into the comments because I wanted to. I'm sort of growing now, and I'm in a new stage in this thing. I was kind of curious what people were thinking. What do you attribute it to?
I think it's several things, man. I think number one, you've got a fascinating look. I know that people are definitely gravitated to people that kind of have that look, strong delivery. And also, the story of being the longest ever active trader on Wall Street. This guy's transacted billions of dollars in his career. I need to shut up and listen to him. You know what I mean? So I think that, and also just how we tied in, I think, some wholesome moments as well about maybe some of your adversity that you had faced in your life. And I think that it just left the younger generation with a very positive, there were a lot of things to touch on, right? We talked about to invest in stocks and not stuff,
Right.
right? Which is one of the kind of your trademarks in a
Right,
sense, right?
right.
You invented that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so I just think it was all around just a master class on like a viral piece of content. And we can't forget our police officer, man.
I
The-
know,
the
that was so
officer,
great.
that
And we
was
also,
awesome,
right,
man.
that was so
Yeah,
much fun.
yeah.
So of all the people, you know, because look, you have an amazing ability to really, in an empath, I don't know if you use the word empath or empathetic way of doing it, of sort of getting, you know, because people are very guarded, wealthy people are even more guarded, right? But you're able to actually pivot and ask questions that get really wonderful answers. You listen really beautifully, but you're really quick in your responses. It's almost like you've had this masterclass in training on how to interview somebody, because your responses are extraordinary, and you can get the best. Look, I've found it in a way, because I did not think I was a good interviewer. I thought it was easier to be interviewed, and it's not easy to interview someone, right? I mean, to be able to answer the right question or get out of them what, you know, you can find somebody who's really exciting and fun and with a lot of money, and it's not a very exciting, you know, you interview them, it's a totally different thing than somebody else doing it. Of all the people, I mean, you've interviewed billionaires, right? Of all, you know, look, and what is a thread that's gone through them that you find is, besides the fact that they have a whole bunch of shitload of money, excuse my language, what do you find is the most extraordinary thing that is similar in all of them?
So I got two things for you. The first thing is, I interviewed Reid Hoffman one time, who's the founder of LinkedIn.
Oh my God, okay.
He sold LinkedIn to Microsoft for $26 billion. And I asked him, I said, Reid, if you had to start from zero and you had 1 year to make $1 billion and your life depended on it, what would you do? And he stopped me right there and he goes, I never play a 1 year game. It's a minimum of 10 years. And so that's it. Billionaires think in decades, not days. They think so much long term. And one of the biggest things that in particular my generation I think struggles with, especially with how social media has changed people's perception on what's possible.
Get rich quick type of a thing?
It's, Warren Buffett says you get rich slow. And so I think that, don't get me wrong, I think that there's, with technology and the resources, it's like, you know, again, I was a millionaire at 23 off social media and the attention economy, but like 10 years ago, that's not really a thing, or it was maybe just starting to barely become a thing for people. But I think it's that long-term thinking. And then number two, these people are obsessed, like just like you are with numbers in the stock market.
You
like
eat, sleep, dream, work.
That's what it is. It like you literally, you almost kind of in a sense you lose your mind a little bit to it. Like I'm definitely like I've lost my mind a little bit.
Yeah.
To the channel that I'm
crazy
building.
And I'm crazy, but you need to embrace that.
You know,
it's a good crazy.
It's sometimes where you're up till 2-3 a.m. like you can't stop scheming, you can't stop thinking, and it's like, you know, it's a blessing and a curse though, because you never really get satisfied. And I interviewed one time Mike Rapoli, founder of Body Armor, and he sold Body Armor and Smart Water for a total of $12 billion to Coca-Cola. And he talks about, look, when the big guy on top, when they get comfortable, the starving entrepreneur comes up and eats their lunch. And so I feel like if you can have that mentality that no matter how successful you get, I talk about this now, like we have 20 million followers, but I'm more motivated now than I was when we had 1 million or less than 1 million, because like I know that if I stop, there's already 1,000 people trying to do exactly what I do. They're gonna, you know, come up, and I'm like, no, we gotta keep on doing the thing that we kind of had created here. You know.
You know, so look, so I recently got 1 million followers, and I was able to pivot, right? Because you know, look on the internet it says I'm worth $1.5 billion. I was able to not answer your question about how much I'm worth because I didn't think it was that important. But it wasn't until recently that I became a millionaire, and that's kind of a fun, exciting thing. It's not a matter of when you do. It's also, look, it's a matter of what you do. Look, having the platform and a matter of what you do with the platform, right? The cash and prizes are one thing, but it's a matter of what you do with the money, right? Or you do with the platform, right? So, you know, you've interviewed some of the most extraordinary people, you know, and look, sometimes we just talked about Brandon Dawson, about how 80% of companies that make it to 1 to 5 million don't make it any further, and I love the fact that if we're not constantly vigilant, understanding and being humble enough to know that someone's standing right behind us willing to eat our lunch, and we never give up and never stop striving to be better at what we do. I mean, you found something you love to do, right? There's that great old line, if you find something you love to do, you'll never work a day in your life. You've found that. Right? At what point did you realize that this was something that you just had to do for the rest of your life?
Well, I think that it was when we interviewed our first billionaire, Mark Cuban.
That was the first one.
The first one I did, yeah, and it wasn't set up either. I was in Austin, Texas. I had been running the channel for about a year. wasn't making like a ton of money off of it.
And was it just sort of a generic? Were you interviewing? Had you come up with that idea yet, the formula, or not yet?
I had been doing interviews for about a year,
Okay.
But at the time, I mean, again, when we started the channel, we didn't have connections.
Right.
We didn't even have the credibility yet. So you kind of couldn't just start going up to billionaires, and connecting with them to interview them. And so it's literally just organic on the street, which is, that's what had made us to where we are today.
Right.
And so he was speaking at South by Southwest, a big tech conference out in
Right.
Austin. And I went up to him after he was speaking, did the interview, got a couple million views. And then it was kind of that moment where I was like, you know what? I've gotten thousands of rejections trying to interview people, but if a guy like Mark Cuban can stop and give me a couple minutes of his time to do an interview, then it's like, I'm not gonna ever let rejection faze me. Because you were talking about that earlier, about like not, taking no for an answer, but more so like people have such a fear of rejection. I just think the worst thing somebody can say is no. That's the worst thing they can say.
That's the worst thing, exactly.
And you know what? But what's even worse than rejection is regret. There's a saying, if you think the price of winning is too high, wait until you get the bill of regret. I think that regret is the absolute worst thing in today's world.
Regret and resentments, actually, those are the things that rent space in your head and that will freeze you up. They will prevent you from growing in any way. I mean, look, you find... look, I could talk to you for absolutely ever. That's an amazing thing. The fact that, because Mark Cuban, I've met him a couple of times. Obviously, we all know him from Shark Tank, and look, and his journey, and he always talks about it. Look, what I've found is that I've motivated and inspired a whole generation now, which is what I learned from reading the comments on our interview. How many people are watching me, and not just watching me for the entertaining. I'm entertaining, but watching me and I understanding my commitment to sharing my experience with them. Right? Like if I had, everyone should find a mentor, right? I mean, for you, obviously, your father was a mentor. Was there someone in business or in social media that was a mentor to you?
In this particular channel, I don't think so.
Okay.
That came over time, especially with all the amazing people that we were meeting, connecting with, and interviewing.
Right.
One of the businesses that we started was a marketing agency for a lot of entrepreneurs, and the reason why that was so valuable for us is because not only are we helping them with their content, but we're getting to learn from them. And so I've been able to invest in several, big real estate deals in the last year with people that have been immensely successful in real estate. And that's through, getting to kind of know these people as like mentors and whatnot now. So, I mean, I think that in the beginning, I didn't necessarily have like a great business mentor when I started the channel. Obviously, I learned a lot. I consumed a lot of content. And then as we were building the channel, it was kind of like a cheat code because I'm interviewing these people, but I'm learning from them and I'm able to implement things into our businesses and what we're doing based on all the lessons and advice that I'm receiving from these people.
So this is one thing, we're not done yet, but I wanted to note this because I think it's so important. People will come up to me and just ask me to take a picture. They won't ask me my name. Maybe they know my name. They won't introduce themselves. They'll just want a selfie with me.
Yeah.
The one thing that you do, and you do it every time, and people always comment about it, is you never walk away from an interview or an interaction with another human being without asking for their contact information.
Yeah.
If young people who are watching this, or old people, or people who are just striving to get into business, learn one thing that's the most important thing, it's a matter of make that connection. What you may take a selfie with me, and what are you going to do? It's like social media has its incredible assets. We can learn a lot from it, but it's also, it's become a bit dangerous because people are hiding behind it. They're using it as an excuse to really grow and do something with their lives in so many ways. They think views and likes are really it doesn't mean anything at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It's a matter of what you do with it. And so you always ask that. Can I get your contact info?
Yeah.
And I love to see how much of an effect that has on people when they read that and like in our interview, because at the end of the day, it is so much more important, right, to networking, right? Is look, I didn't always know. I was taught early on that you never burn your bridges, that you learn from your elders. and I had two wonderful role models in my parents who had survived, the most devastating experience, but were resilient. They found each other. They had the American dream, and they woke up every day, with, and you probably had the same with your parents, coming from a home where there was unconditional love and there was a support, it's real. That is one of the most important things, right? That how important that is, the way that we treat other people, first of all, not burning bridges, and mentors. I mean, for me, I've had, look, when I was dying of COVID, right, I was given 4 months to live when I got COVID, and I was sitting at home, and they'd taken my family away, and I was isolated in my apartment. All I had was me and my iPhone, and a couple of people popped up on the iPhone. One of them was David Meltzer. Do you know who David Meltzer is? Okay.
Yeah.
So, David Meltzer, for those of you who don't know, is who the Jerry Maguire movie is about. He was the guy who created in sports management the whole sponsorship endorsement idea. By the age of 28, he was worth a couple $100 million, and then he crashed and burned, and he went bankrupt and had to move back in with his parents. And he dug himself out of that hole and decided to embark on a journey to spread joy to 1 billion people in the world, one person at a time. And that's what he did. He was able to reinvent himself, and that's what he did. And he's gone on to probably become a $100 million again, or maybe even a billionaire. I don't know. But, where he sees so much value, what he does is in networking, right? I was nicknamed by a young artist who I connected with, the connector. Right, so I probably have an ego. That's fine in a healthy way. But for me, I don't need to be standing at the top of the mountain all by myself, really successful. Yeah. For me, it's so important that I connect people who are like-minded, who can help each other out. Mm-hmm. Right, at the end of the day, that is, that's so important. Right, I've inspired so many young people to become traders and whatnot. But the ones that I key in on are those who very quickly they became successful, but they decided to give back. Right, like you said, you became successful, and you immediately started a company to try and help other young entrepreneurs be able to monetize what you've learned how to do so well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is so extraordinary. So look, it is. It's funny. You would think. Have you run into billionaires who just did not want? I mean, have you walked away from guys who just were not willing to tell you the story or to say? I mean, I would imagine, at the end of the day, you go and you always say, look, you have a channel that reaches 17 million people,
yeah.
And do you have anything to say to the younger generation?
Right.
I would imagine virtually nobody would ever respond to that in a negative way.
Well, the only way sometimes that they don't is, a lot of those people can sometimes try to be very private,
right.
And they don't want to be out, publicly.
Right.
But I'd say for the most part, I mean, a lot of them have been very receptive to, again, almost in a sense kind of giving back. It's like, hey, you've made so much money, you've become so successful, pass some of that knowledge along, man. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to be a medium for people to tell their story, the lessons that they've learned, the hardships. That's why, like you talked about, mentorship, it's so valuable, because mentorship is wisdom without the wounds. You've got people that dedicated decades of their life,
who have been wounded but are not sharing that part of it.
But it's like, there's some people that have spent 30, 40, 50 years building a company in a particular industry, learning everything about it. And if you're starting out in that same field, you can collapse so much time and knowledge if you attach yourself to the right people. And that's why for younger people, it's like, that is the most valuable thing that you can have. But it's important. So I interviewed one time Robert Herjavec. We talked about Shark Tank a couple of times.
Yep.
And one of the things, I asked him, I was like, Robert, what is more important, what you know or who you know? And he said, absolute bullshit. The most bullshit advice that I ever got is that who you know is more important. And his reasoning, and I completely agree with him, is because if you think that super successful people are going to just gravitate towards you and give you their time and whatnot, and you have nothing of value to kind of offer them, you are sadly mistaken. So that's why the lesson here is, if you want to attach yourself with successful people, number one, credibility kills all bad attitudes. So if you can build yourself into the brand and the person that you need to be for people to come to you, they will. But then also find a way to add value to these people, even if it's something small. You talked about getting the connection. Even if that person's in a completely different business and there's no way you guys are going to do a deal together, you may be able to connect that person with somebody who may be immensely valuable. Sometimes the most valuable thing you can offer somebody is a connection that you already know that can help them.
It's huge.
And they never forget who introed them. So it's like, I just think that, it's very valuable.
And that takes a certain level of humility. Like, why, there are people why would I connect those two people if I'm not going to get anything out of it?
Right.
Right. So one of the interesting interesting things that David Meltzer has. He has a thing called the overlap agreement. An overlap agreement is, so think about it. So in my career, I've introduced a lot of different people to each other in different industries that would have never met if it wasn't for me. And then they went on to go on and do big things. And we talked about resentment and regret, right? And I sat around really upset, like, why didn't I do something about it to be able to get some skin in that game? Because I made that connection. And so I talked about that with David Meltzer, and he said he felt the exact same way, that in order to, that when money comes into a situation, it can taint the situation. We know that money, people get funny around money. Greed is a strange concept. Even though Gordon Gekko said in the first Wall Street movie, greed is good, right? It still adds a funny dynamic to the story. So the overlap agreement is this, that if I introduce you and you, right, the first thing I do, if it seems like there's going to be any kind of a connection that is going to be viable, that may lead to something, I make both parties sign the overlap agreement, which means that if you guys start any kind of a business or anything happens as a result of my introduction, I get 7% of whatever it is going forward. Now, it may seem like greedy or whatnot, but the bottom line is it's not. Because when you take money out of the equation, right, and that negotiating part of it, right, it leaves a purity to it. Like, I do not want to be sitting back and being angry and resentful, right? That stuff rents space in my head that is not, that it doesn't leave me with any kind of a positive feeling about it.
Yeah.
Right? So your best advice to the younger generation. You have listened to 32 billionaires and how many? 1,000 millionaires?
Yeah.
Right? Who have all given you their best advice to the younger generation. And what's your best advice to the younger generation? And you are the younger generation.
Yeah, I would say a couple things. Number one, get out of your hometown. Never take advice from someone you wouldn't trade places with. Believing that you can is more profitable than believing that you can't. Success loves speed. And then let me give them one more. This is a good one right here. Procrastination is the assassination of all destination. You brought up one more thing about the billionaires is that, you know, it's interesting. Like, I had a billionaire, Matt Ishbia, owns the biggest United Wholesale Mortgage, biggest mortgage company in America, owns the Phoenix Suns. And I asked him what he notices among all his billionaire friends, and it's that they all text back within 5 minutes. And so I feel like a lot of people are like, man, I gotta wait to call. Or it's like, no, urgency, sense of urgency, I think is important. I think that's, like, again, I am the younger generation, like you said. I'm not somebody that's going to bash my own generation, but I do think that there is a lot of maybe a lack of sense of urgency in some people. I think in people in general, people don't have like kind of the urgency sometimes to kind of go up and get after it. So I think those would be. I
always think of myself as a momentum person.
Yeah.
That energy, like nothing, you can't coast.
And that's the most valuable. That's the most important thing is momentum, because the minute you lose it, it's hard to get it back. And people talk about that all the time.
100%. Look, one of the other things is, look, we learn so much more from failure than we do from success.
Yes.
You agree with that concept?
100%. Yeah.
I mean, think about it. It's not how many times you get knocked down, it's how many times you get back up.
Right.
And as you said, you know, when I talk to younger people, and they, oh, I can't do that. I can't approach that person. I can't talk to them. I can't knock on that door. As you said, what is the worst that's going to happen is a no.
But sometimes you do need that though to happen, because, like, you know, people will talk about, oh, if you were to go back, like, what would you have done differently?
Right.
In a sense, it's like, would I really even done anything differently? Because it's like, now that I've learned that lesson, like, I will forever like not make that mistake, which is something that I think anybody can attest to if they were building something from the ground up. It's like, hey, there's going to be those pitfalls.
And if you listen, I've listened to almost every one of your interviews, and you know, they will always say that the mistakes that I've made have curated my success.
Yes.
Right. You know, and that's one of the most exciting things. Well, you know, look, I could talk to you forever, and I hope we get to do this again. You know, you have taught me so much about so much, and you know, as an interviewer, as a human being, you know, the human is part of this thing. That is, I think, what makes you. I mean, it's funny to watch now all the young people who are in your footsteps who are trying to pull off the same thing that you are, and none of them can really do it.
For sure.
You know, and because of your special look, humans. There are parts of us that are the same, but there are parts of us that are really different. And you are extraordinary. If I can say, I feel myself as no older than you. I feel myself as a 23-year-old person. But if I can be at all fatherly, first of all, I'm incredibly proud of you.
Thank you.
You know, for what you've done. And I love being able. I always talk about the word humble and humility. If you were to ask 10 people what it meant, nobody could really give you a definition. In my world, humility is to always be teachable. Right? At the end of the day, there's nobody. I've learned so much from the most unlikely sources. I've learned more things from a homeless guy on the street sometimes than some guy who's got a whole bunch of a bigger bank account. You know, from a human point of view, from the way we interact with other human beings, right? About how you just never burn bridges and how you are building this. It's not, you know, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon, right? It's the long, you also mentioned that, it's the long game, right? I mean, one of the things that I'm seeing with all these young people who are, is they think Wall Street is a get rich quick scheme. Right, and if that's what you're in it, you're going to fail. You're going to have your high highs and your low lows, right? And so that's important to know, that if you're playing the long game, and that's the most important thing.
Absolutely.
Anyway, you know what? I'm going to be completely honest with you. You asked me. I don't think you even asked me when I became a millionaire, but I will tell you that it was 67 years old that I became a millionaire. It was this year, after so many years. I've been in this industry for 40 years, and it wasn't until this year that I became a millionaire.
Congratulations.
And thank you. And that's, you know, I'm not a billionaire yet, but I strive to be. And I strive to be one for all that it can do to help other people. Because at the end of the day, that's the goal here, right? It's to empower and help other people be their best self and share with them as much. You are just a man.
Appreciate you.
I just love everything about it. School of Hard Knocks, James Dumoulin, and the team. He's surrounded himself with extraordinary people. And you know what? This is the Einstein of Wall Street, and that's all I got to say about